Here we are in Microsoft Flight Simulator once again to look at another add-on aeroplane for the simulator, and that's the one that you can see in front of you, which is the Subsonex JSX-2 from developer YSIM. I will put a link in the description below as to where you can get this thing. It's available from Sim Market, where it costs €19.20. And for your €19.20, what you get is this, a very, very lovely and diminutive aeroplane, which is based on a real kit plane that you can buy. You get 5 paint jobs with the thing, although this thing's actually been out a while. It's not just come out, it's been out a few weeks, so people have been doing repaints of this. But you get 5 paint jobs with it, and you get a 16-page PDF manual, and the PDF manual, I have to say, is certainly amongst one of the best ones that I've seen. It's got very, very large, clear, well-labelled screenshots of all the instruments and the switches and stuff like that, and there's a lot of information about the plane and how to fly it and stuff like that for less than €20. Great model and great texturing and a great PDF manual. When I say great texturing, I really do mean that. Have a look at this. Now, anyone who is around aeroplanes and in aviation and stuff like that will probably have one of these things that you can see on the engine cover on the front of here, which is they're very often given away as promotional items. They're sort of like little key rings with a little fob on them that's like a remove before flight thing, which this is one of on the engine cover here. The texturing on that and the detail on it looks exactly like the real thing. I've got one of these on my bag that I take to work, and it looks exactly like that. It's so well done. And this thing's like that all over. There is such good attention to detail on it, and the texturing is so good on this. It's amongst the best that I've ever seen on an add-on aeroplane for any simulator, let alone Microsoft Flight Simulator. I mean, things like there's a little placard on the side of the engine that you can see there. You can read all of the detail on that placard and stuff, the riveting detail, the slight sort of creases on the skin of the aeroplane. It's all really, really good. So despite the fact that, I mean, I must admit, I don't know much about the developer YSIM, and as far as I'm aware, they've not made any aeroplanes before. They've certainly not made an aeroplane for Microsoft Flight Simulator before. But I strongly suspect that they've got, like, whoever YSIM is, have got a lot of experience of modelling and coding, because this thing is a really, really nice model. It's very, very accurate to the real thing in terms of the model, and in terms of what it looks like, and in terms of what it flies like, and in terms of what the avionics are like, as we'll see. So it's very, very impressive. So this is one of 3 microjets that I've reviewed for my channel, and the other 2 that I've reviewed have got the merits, but this thing is very, very impressive indeed. Anyway, let's take a look at the inside in a moment. So we can see that you've got a remove before flight thing on the engine, and you've got a remove before flight thing on the pitot tube, but we can remove those when we remove a remove before flight thing from the inside of the cockpit. So let's have a look inside. So here we are in the cockpit, and in common with sort of microjets of this type, like the BD5 that I also reviewed on this channel, it's a deceptively simple looking cockpit. However, don't be fooled, this is not only beautifully modelled, it's also beautifully detailed. I will give you an example of what I am talking about here. Have a look at the texturing on that anodized alloy for the sort of fastenings for the fuel system and all of the sort of like piping and stuff like that. That is so well done, that, and so sharp. Really beautiful. Look at that stitching replication on the seat there. That's really impressive. Look at the rivet detail. You can zoom in on that, and it looks amazing. All that sort of pop riveting. There's just the right amount of shine on the wings and stuff like that. This is so impressive. This, and the texturing is like that throughout. So all the kind of PBR stuff that's going on is really, really amazing. And it doesn't stop being impressive there, as you'll see. So let's have a look at the inside of this thing. Now, you can see what I mean by it. You can get a little bit of a better look at that remove before flight thing there, what I mean, and how good that is. Now, that is the unlock lever for the landing gear. So anyway, we'll get that thing out because you know, I don't think we're going to accidentally put the gear up when we're on the ground. Anyway, I will take you through all the stuff that's in this cockpit, and then what we'll do is we'll get the thing cranked up, and then we'll take it for a little bit of a fly. Trust me, you're going to be impressed with this thing. So down here there is a let's start with this. You can close the canopy. So there goes the canopy closing. Now, down here, what you can see is MGL and G3X. And if I put my tooltip over there, you can see that what you can do is you can switch between Garmin and MGL avionics. So if you happen to like the default Garmin avionics, or you've souped them up with a third-party expansion to it, then what you can do is you can have Garmin avionics there, or what you can have is you can have MGL avionics, which is quite common to find on the real aeroplane. I'll talk about the real aeroplane a little bit when we get it in the air. And we'll see that when we crank this up, that what we've not got in this thing is we've not got what a lot of cheap add-on aeroplanes do, where they just sort of like have the default avionics in there and they don't sort of do any custom avionics. This has custom coded MGL avionics, so it looks like the real thing and it functions very much like the real thing as well. So, you know, 2 choices on avionics fit, including the 3D modeling of the switches and stuff like that. So very, very impressed with that. And we'll see a bit more of that when we crank the thing up. So now what you've got, moving on, is you've got the throttle lever. Now this is modeled not exactly like the real thing, but very, very close to it. The real thing has a little unlock lever there, which you can see, and you can push the throttle forward, and then that lock springs out to stop you closing the throttle to shut the engine down. Now that is how the real throttle on this thing actually functions. However, there's one thing that you don't do on this that you do on the real thing. This little sort of arc bit here, you push that down as part of the unlocking system. You don't have to do that in the sim, but beyond that, it's actually pretty much like how you start the real thing. And the real thing on this, the real engine on this thing, which is a PBS TJ100, more about that when we talk about the real aeroplane, starts pretty much automatically. There is no sort of start switch. You turn on all the power systems and what have you, and how you start this thing is you move it to this stage there, it starts cranking up, you hold it there for about 3 seconds, then you move it to the next stage and what have you, and the thing starts up automatically, and that's how you start it in the sim. So that's about as close to the real thing as you can possibly get without needing to push down that part to move the throttle initially. So great attention to detail on there, and very, very similar to how you start the real thing. Let's carry on this panel. So underneath this, what you have is you have an emergency stop button for the engine. So you can see there, it's a guarded switch. There is a flaps lever there. The flaps is a sort of motorized switch, so you just hold it and the flaps come up or the flaps come down. We'll see that when we get the thing going. There is a master battery switch there that we can turn on. Notice that when we turn that on, we get green lights indicating that the gear is down. We could flip that, but you know, probably don't want to do that. We can get the fuel pump on. We can get the engine main on there, and then what we can do is we can turn on the Avionics Master, and you can see that here the avionics start lighting up. So let's have a look at this. So you've got the page knob, which is similar to the real avionics on this thing. Or at least the real avionics that you find a lot of the time. Now, it doesn't have every page that the real avionics has, but it is pretty damn close to it. And what I will do is I'll put a link in the description to a video on YouTube that is a cockpit tour of this, and you will see how accurate this is in comparison to the real thing. But if you prefer, and obviously there's all these little buttons that you can press as well, but if you prefer, you can flip this switch like that, and then what it will do is it will change to Garmin avionics and what have you. So if you want Garmin avionics, you can do that as well, and all that functions properly as well. I think you're probably going to want the MGL avionics because they're more common in the real aeroplane, and very nice they are too. So you can see all this stuff works, you know, like the transponder and what have you, and all this like. So although the airplane is intended for VFR, you know, you can see it has a warning message on there that says not IFR equipped. There is enough information on there. You could probably blag it to fly at IFR. So, carrying on across the panel, what we've got here is we've got pitot heat we can turn on, we can turn the strobe lights on, and we can turn the position lights on. There are circuit breaker buttons there. The circuit breakers don't function, but that's about the only thing that doesn't. There is a smoke oil system there so that you can do aerobatics and air shows and leave a smoke trail. We'll see that when we get in the air, and it works very, very well. And then coming down to the central pedestal, what you've got is you've got elevator trim here, which you can operate by rolling your mouse wheel, or you can use your keyboard shortcuts, or if you've got a trim wheel, like a hardware trim wheel or what have you, you can do that. There is the real aeroplane, the real Subsonex JSX-2 has a ballistic recovery chute, a BRS system like some GA airplanes have. So that would be like it'd have like a little guard switch on it or what have you. But then what you do is you pull that switch if you were in trouble, and a massive parachute would deploy out of the thing and safely get you to the ground. So obviously that doesn't function in the sim because we're not in danger of dying in the flight sim. But on the real thing, that is a ballistic recovery chute. There is a parking brake here, which you can pull or push to set like that. We'll get to this in a minute when we start the thing up. This thing here is just part of the oxygen system, where you choose how you want the oxygen to flow, whether you want it to be on demand or permanent or what have you. So that doesn't actually do anything to the sim, nor really would you want it to. And there is a meter there for the oxygen flow system. The audio panel, there's where you plug the microphone in and the earphones in and what have you. So obviously you don't need that. But you can see here that what we have got is we've got a very, very basic radio system, which is good enough for the simulator. But of course, what you can do is you can use this panel to do the radios as well. So yeah, you can do that. But you can put a transponder on this thing, so you know, like you're up there, you can see you can key in your transponder there. So you know, like you can use this on VATSIM and stuff like that. Other things that we've got is we've got the control column there. And then what we've got over there is we've got the throttle lever. And that is about the size of it. So it's quite comprehensive in terms of avionics, but it is intended for VFR rather than IFR. Now, last but not least, this middle panel, just in case you're curious about what this stuff is. So there are generator, engine, and oil warning lights on there. We can test it there. And then there is something up there that says PDB, yeah? And a button where you can select that. So you can click that, and that PDB button lights up. Now, the PDB system on this is a safety system for the jet engine, because obviously jet engines, you can overcook them if you use too much throttle. So what you can do is you can turn on the PDB system for the jet engine, and then what that will do is if the thing is in any danger of overcooking or what have you, what it will do is it will shut down the engine to stop it setting on fire or throwing some blades or what have you. But the reason that you can inhibit it, which is what you should actually do on the real aeroplane, is you don't want the engine to get hot when you're on short finals and automatically shut down, or automatically shut down just after you've taken off, when you're at that awkward point where you can't make a turn back for the airfield and stuff like that. You'd be trying to do the impossible turn. So what you do is when you're taking off and when you're on finals, you inhibit the PDB system, because you're not going to worry too much about burning the engine out when you're on short finals. You don't want it to cut out. But up at 10,000 feet, if your engine's about to set on fire or it's overheating, you probably do want that inhibitor to kick in. So that's what that PDB system is. Either side of those things, you've got exhaust gas temperature, obviously important for a jet engine, and then what you've got is you've got the RPM for the engines there. I'll talk about the sort of speeds and V-speeds. It's all in the manual, incidentally, when we get this thing in the air. So let's crank this thing up. Now, to start this thing up, if we've got all of these switches on, what we do is we push that switch in, and then, like the real thing, which has the PBS TJ100 engine, how you start it is you simply push the throttle forward past that point there, and then you hold it down, and you will see there that we are getting pressure building there, and the engine will be starting up. You can see there gallons per hour and what have you, and we'll go outside and we'll listen to this thing. So this is cranking up and getting ready to go. Good engine sounds, eh? Sounds like it might be pretty stable, that. And obviously, when we move around, you can hear the intake sound. And in the cockpit, in the real thing, you can actually hear the engine quite a bit, because the PBS TJ100 is a turbojet engine, not a turbofan engine. So the turbojets tend to be a little bit louder than turbofans. But then again, it is behind you, so it's sort of like, you know, sightline wise, it's blocked a little bit. So the sound levels of this are, you know, pretty similar to the real thing or what have you. You could, if you wanted to, turn that sound down a little bit in your sim, but I'm going to keep it up as long as you can hear me. Then that's fair enough. Yeah. So you can now see that what we've got is the exhaust gas temperature is remaining pretty stable at about 540 there. And the RPM is there, but it's not able to cut back to shut the engine down because this little spring lock lever is there. So if you wanted to shut the engine down, what you could do is you could push that button in, then you'd be able to pull the throttle back. That would shut the engine down, or alternatively, you could shut off the engine main and the fuel fuel pump, I should say, or what you could do is you could raise this guarded switch and then you could hit the emergency stop for it. So lots and lots of ways to stop the engine and what have you, although typically what you would do is probably just close it down and what have you and use the automatic sequence for that. So there you go, and that is about the size of it in terms of avionics, but very, very nice function of custom coded avionics for the thing. And custom coded RPM gauge and stuff like that for the PBS TJ100. You can see there PBS TJ100, because this gauge here is one that's specific to that engine. If you buy one of those engines, you get that gauge with it, so that you can install it in the cockpit. So anyway, let's get this thing in the air. Bit of lag on the pilot appearing, but you see that the pilot does appear. Now, just before we get this thing going, when you're looking at the exterior of that thing, you might think that this thing is what you call a V-tail, like some Beechcraft Bonanzas are V-tails, and there are a few sort of jet fighters in the past that have V-tails on them. But what it actually is that's a little bit deceptive. What it actually is it's a Y-tail, yeah? So although it has actually got elevators which function as rudders, it's actually got a little rudder here on the bottom there, which means two things. One, it's quite sensitive on the rudder, but the reason that they did that on the real aeroplane is, you might know this about aeroplanes with Y-tails, they can occasionally be difficult to recover from a spin, because obviously when you want to recover from a spin, before you actually start pulling out of the dive, what you have to do is you have to stop the spin. Traditionally, what you do to stop a spin is, if you're spinning to the right, you give it full left rudder so that the spin stops. When the spin stops, you centralize the controls, you're pushing forward on the stick, you're getting some airspeed, and then you pull out of the dive. However, on airplanes with a Y-tail, what can happen is the wings can block the airflow to the Y-tail in certain spin orientations, and that can make it difficult to recover from the spin. But if you also have a rudder that's well clear of those elevators that are also functioning as a rudder, you've got a large surface areas of rudder, which makes it a bit safer to recover. And that's why they've done it. But it also means that it's very, very sensitive on the rudder as well, which can make taking off a little bit tricky. You got to kind of keep your feet off them rudder pedals a little bit, otherwise it'd be fairly easy to depart. Anyway, on the subject of departing, let's do that, shall we? Now, you might think that this thing is taxiing really fast, but what it actually is that we are really, really low to the ground. This thing is is so low to the ground, in fact, that I think the wing is only about a foot above the surface of the tarmac. Like that, there you go. You can see that. Now, what that means is, that means a couple of things. One, you like it when you're in a sports car that's very low to the ground. It seems very fast. But the other thing that means is that there is a lot of ground effect on this thing. So it's not difficult to land, but it can float a bit when you land it because of that ground effect. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to raise the flaps. Now, I could do that with my keyboard shortcuts, or I can do that with my hardware flaps lever or what have you, or I could use this switch here to raise the flaps, or I can use my keyboard. So we can see there we're getting the flaps up. Now you can take off with some intermediate flaps if you want to, or if you've got a long runway, you can take off without flaps and what have you. Yeah, entirely up to you, to be honest. You know what I mean? If you've got a long enough runway, don't bother with flaps. If you haven't, give it some flaps and get off the deck. So anyway, here we are. We're at this, incidentally, is the airport that I'm at here is the YSIM Payware Manchester Airport. When I say payware, it's actually not very, very expensive still at that. So if you're looking for a decent payware version of Manchester Airport, this would be it. At some point I am going to review this scenery because I work at Manchester Airport, so I'm pretty familiar with the place, and I'll probably drive around and do some comparison shots of the real place against this place at some point. So here we are on the runway. Now, what we're looking for takeoff on this, obviously the manual covers all this. What we're looking for is about 75 knots to lift off. So let's go for it. Roll up. Bearing in mind what I said about, like this can be a little bit twitchy on the rudders, so you got to be a little bit gentle on them. But it gets up pretty quick anyway, so you only have to sort of watch it for a little bit, and then we'll go on the exterior view, and we get the gear up, and we got the flaps up on the thing. Now you do kind of have to get the gear up and the flaps up fairly quick on this thing, because you're gonna want the gear up before about 110 knots, something like that. Any more than that, and you're gonna start damaging the gear on this thing. And all right, it's not an F-16, so it's not going to accelerate like crazy, but you saw there it did accelerate quite well. It doesn't set off like a a rocket sled, but it has actually got fairly fast acceleration. So let's try that smoke system, shall we? So I'll put the smoke system on like that, and we'll zoom out a little bit, and there goes the smoke system. So if you want to do your very own air show, you can. Notice that we get a visual indication there that the smoke oil system is on the thing. That's pretty cool. If you want to do your very own air show, you can do. Now, in terms of aerobatics, this thing, all right, I'll turn it around and head back towards the airport, and I'll show you the roll rate on the thing, because it's got a reasonably okay roll rate, but it isn't a MiG-29. But with a little bit of speed on, I'll give you the roll rate. I'll just get clear of the clouds so that we can see the ground and get a bit of an indication of a horizon and stuff like that. So here we go. Full stick left. So that's a pretty good roll rate. full stick right. And if we've got, I'll just get the thing going. I don't want to rip the tail off this thing. We'll get the speed down a little bit. And I'll give you full left rudder and full right rudder. So we go down to 100 knots. And then there's full left rudder. And there's full right rudder. So, you know, the rudder's quite sensitive. Or rather, the elevators and the little kind of micro Y-tail rudder is quite sensitive. So it's about time we spoke about the real aeroplane. So Sonex or Sonics, depending on how you want to pronounce the name of the company, is a real aircraft company. They are at Oshkosh in Wisconsin, and they've been around since I think 1997. They started building little prop kit planes that you could buy and build yourself. Typically the sort of thing that's you know, like not ultralights, but you know, not very large things. The sort of thing that would have a Rotax 912 or something like that in it, and what have you. And very, very nice they are too, and they're incredibly popular. But eventually, what they decided to do was they decided to build a jet plane along the lines of what Jim Bead was aiming for when he developed the BD5. One of which I also reviewed for this channel. Just a few days ago and what have you. So this is kind of like the modern descendant of the BD5, but probably a lot safer than the BD5, to be honest. Because this thing can, you know, it's produced today, so you know it can take advantage of modern CNC machining and stuff like that. So it's probably more precisely made than BD5 kits were. Now, so in the Sonex aircraft company had been around since about 97, but I think it was about 2012, 2013 that they decided to make this aeroplane. Maybe a little bit after that, but I think the prototype of this made its first flight in 2014, and that was the JSX-1. And what they determined was that it needed a few tweaks to it and what have you, and so they did that, and then after all the tweaks and what have you, it became the JSX-2, which is the sort of kit plane that you can buy now. Now, to give you an idea of the sort of cost of this thing, you can probably build one of these, you know, if you've got the money, for about $100,000, maybe $110,000, because I think the sort of kit, the sort of ready to build kit, is I think it's about $60,000. I think the engine for it is about $40,000, which is, you know, you're about $100,000, and then you probably look at another $10,000 or somewhere in that area to sort of finish everything off and get it painted and stuff like that. So, you know, this thing's about $120,000, which is, you know, for your very own personal jet plane, is not bad going. So, anyway, that's the JSX-2, which is this thing that you can buy from them. They are actually developing another version of that, which I think has recently flown. I think it made the prototype made its first flight last year. And that is a twin-seater version of this. Now, it isn't tandem seating; it's side-by-side seating on it. But it basically is very similar to this. I mean, that might change. They might have tandem seating on it now, but last I heard, it was side-by-side seating on the thing. Yeah, could be wrong. Maybe it is tandem seating. Anyway, this thing. So this thing uses a Czech-built engine, which is the PBS TJ100. The TJ stands for turbojet. And that's an amazing little engine. It is. The entire engine only weighs 46 pounds, but it can develop 281 pounds of thrust. So that is a massive power to weight ratio. for a little engine. And when I say little engine, I do mean little engine. The entire engine that's up on the top deck there, that thing there, is 24 inches long and 11 inches in diameter. That's it. It weighs 43 pounds, and you know it's 2 foot long and less than a foot in diameter. That's an amazing engine. Flipping out those the PBS company, you know what I mean? They must know what they're doing to do that, and they actually make a slightly more powerful version of it as well, which is the I think that might be the one that they're using on the 2-seater variant of the Subsonex, and that's I think the more powerful one is the PBS TJ 150. I think it might be. You know, that's a bit more powerful and what have you. So the real plane, 16.5 feet long, 18-foot wingspan, weighs 500 pounds with no fuel or anything like that in it, and then it's got an all-up weight of 1,000 pounds. So you got a useful load of about 500 pounds. That's for fuel and, you know, the weight of the person that's in it and stuff like that. It has a 40-gallon fuel tank capacity, which will give you about 2 hours flying, which equates to about 400 miles of range. You know, maybe a little bit more, maybe 480 or something like that. Yeah. It cruises at about 210 knots. It stalls at about 50 knots, and it has a VNE, velocity never exceed, of 250 knots. In terms of aerobatics as well, and you saw that we were doing a little bit of aerobatics with the smoke on before, it's normally stressed for plus 4.4 G and minus 2.2 G. However, if you use a minimal fuel load on the thing and do a couple of tweaks to it, it can be stressed for plus 6 G and minus 3, which means that you could really pull some strong aerobatics on this thing. But, you know, 4.4 G and minus 2.2 G is pretty respectable. You know, I mean, I've flown aerobatic airplanes that, you know, that have that those sort of stress settings, and, you know, I wasn't afraid to throw them about a little bit. So, you know, that's quite impressive there. Anyway, we're going to bring this thing in for a landing, but what you do have to do with this airplane is it's pretty slippery. Yeah, I've been flying along with the throttle back, and we've got about 115, 114 knots that we're maintaining there, and the speed that you want to be down to lower the gear is about 110 knots. Yeah. And you know, getting dirty with the flaps and stuff like that. So what you would do most of the time with this thing is fly a pretty wide circuit with quite a long final, and come in a little bit shallow so that you're going to lose some speed, and then get the thing dirtied up and what have you, so that you can stick the nose down and not be accelerating. So I'm getting the flaps down, and I'm getting the gear down. So we've got all that. So we've got 3 greens, and we can obviously visually check the flaps, and then we can bring this in. And as I say, takeoff speed is about 75, and this thing will stall at about 50. That's the real thing and the simulator version. So we're going to be aiming for sort of like touching down at about 50, maybe 55, or what have you. In terms of performance and what have you, yeah, at sort of reasonably low altitude, you're going to get about 1,500, 1,600 feet per minute climb rate out of this thing. And then that'll sort of drop off as you get higher and higher and what have you. It's going to be down to about maybe 200, 300 feet when you get up near 20,000 and stuff like that. So here I am bringing this thing in. Now, keep in mind that this thing is pretty slick, and it's going to have a lot of ground effect, and it's going to seem like you should touch down when you're still quite a long way off the deck. So I'm holding it off and 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 holding it off. And finally it drops down, and you think you're almost dropping through the runway by the time this thing actually touches down. But, you know, apart from the rudder being a little bit twitchy, because it's very, very sensitive, it's not actually that hard to land. You just got to bear in mind that you need to get it slowed down pretty quickly, or rather you need to get it slowed down, you know, early on in the circuit, you know what I mean, because if you've got it nose down, it's slick and it's going to maintain that airspeed. We'll get the flaps up. We'll get this thing off the runway, and I'll ignore the fact that I shouldn't really be going along this taxiway. So there you go. That is the YSIM Subsonex JSX-2. Now, if you watch my my channel a lot of the time, and if you don't, why not subscribe to me? If you watch that, you'll know that what I did was I reviewed a couple of other add-on microjets just recently. One of those is the Ventura, an Italian aeroplane, and the other one is the BD5, and another American kit plane, sort of visually quite similar to this thing. And both of those are great fun. The Ventura is bigger and has two engines, so it's, you know, a little bit faster and, you know, a little bit more long-legged and stuff like that, and it's the kind of thing that you could go a longer journey on and stuff like that. So that's a good reason for that one. And it's very aerobatic as well. The BD5 is sort of historically interesting, so there's a reason to have that one. And then you got this thing. Now, I think you'd agree that this thing is very, very, very impressive, particularly for a debut effort from a developer. It's less than €20. It's beautifully modelled, and I mean beautifully modelled. You don't need me to tell you that. Look how close this stands up to close inspection, and the entire thing is like that. You have custom coded avionics on the thing, which replicate the ones in the real thing, but if you don't like them, you can have that Garmin in there, which is the default one. But of course, what you could do is if you've got a tweaked up one, you could use that on the thing. It performs pretty much like the real thing. All of the switches are pretty much like the real thing. It's got a smoke oil system on it and what have you. What's not to like about it? It's fantastic. So yeah, those other microjets that I've reviewed on this channel, yeah, they're great too, you know what I mean, and I recommend them. But this thing, I would encourage you to have a look at it and, you know, probably consider buying it, because I think it's worth sort of like rewarding a good effort from a developer, and considering this is the first one from that developer and what an outstanding job they've done on it, then, you know, if you like supporting developers who've gone the extra mile, then definitely consider this one, because it is very, very nice indeed. And I don't normally say that on reviews. I normally say, you know, like, it's kind of up to you, you know what I mean? But in this case, I would say, yeah, definitely get this thing and show your support for a developer who's, I think, pushed the boat out here, and done a very, very impressive job. I'm putting the parking brake on there. Engine sounds great, texture's great, modeling great, avionics great, performance great. I mean, you know, there's not anything on this that isn't really, really well done. The manual's great as well. Yeah. So yeah, seriously consider this, because it's very, very groovy. And there's some interesting stuff in the manual as well. They had to do a bit of a compromise on one thing that they modelled with the fuel system because of the way Microsoft Flight Simulator works and stuff like that. And they even detail why they did that and how they went about it. You know what I mean? So I just think my hat. I have no idea who YSIM are, but my hat is definitely off to them. Anyway, that's it for this review from Chock's Hangar. I've got another one coming up, which I might do tomorrow, which is another one that I've been meaning to do for ages. And then there's another one coming up in about 4 days and what have you. So stay tuned for other stuff, and check out the other videos. And if you like the kind of stuff that I do, hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll get alerts of when all that comes out. Anyway, everybody take care. That's it for now. Bye.